Rodrigo Duterte signs into law a bill providing free tuition for higher education in state universities and colleges. The Department of Budget and Management says the free tuition in SUCs will be implemented in academic year 2018 to 2019. Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano sees a progressive and peaceful future for ASEAN. The government gears up to rebuild Marawi City and other Marawi conflict-affected communities through an interagency task force called Task Force Bangon Marawi. We begin with good news. Higher education in state universities and colleges will now be provided free. This is in line with a new law enacted by President Rodrigo Duterte last night. Here's the full report from Sweden, Velado.
President Rodrigo Duterte has finally signed into law the bill on free tuition fee in state universities and colleges, or SUCs. It came as a surprise following apprehensions from economic managers of the president.
I'm pleased to announce that last night, August 3, 2017, the president signed into law the enrolled bill.
Senior Deputy Executive Secretary Minardo Guevara said, aside from free tuition, the law's mandatory provisions include other expenses such as library, ID, and laboratory fees. The provisions, however, do not cover scholarship, grant and aid, and student loans because it will be taken from a subsidy fund to be administered by Unified Student Financial Assistance Program, or UNIFAST.
Yung mga talagang nangangailangan, the bottom 20% will be prioritized in terms of subsidy for education-related expenses.
Guevara adds, contrary to the proposed 100 billion peso budget for the policy, the Commission on Higher Education believes 16 billion pesos is enough to roll out provisions of the signed law.
The 100 billion peso estimate of the DBM seems to be on the very high side because that is on the basis of the assumption that all aspects of the free tuition bill will be implemented all at the same time.
Meanwhile, senators lauded the decision of President Duterte to sign the free tuition fee bill despite his economic manager's previous recommendation to veto it due to lack of budget. Senator Panfilo Lacson is positive that the national budget can fund the free tuition law. Under the 2017 General Appropriations Act, or GAA, the Senate managed to realign 8.3 billion pesos from pork allocations of congressmen to SUCs through CHED. Lacson said they intend to do the same thing under the proposed 2018 budget. Senator Cheese Escudero thanked the president for signing the Free Tertiary Education Act, as it will now be one of the lasting legacies of his presidency and administration. Minority member Senator Bam Aquino also expressed gratitude to the chief executive and congratulated his fellow lawmakers who supported the policy. One of the bill's principal authors, Senator J.V. Ejercito, said he is happy for the poor but deserving students in SUCs. Senator Lauren Legarda encouraged students who want to go to college in a state university to enroll and enjoy free tuition fee. The president's decision to sign the free tuition in SUCs only shows how he remains committed in bringing about change in the country for the benefit of young Filipinos. Sweden, Velado for the Nation.
Budget Secretary Benjamin Diokno said the free tuition in state universities and colleges will be implemented in the first semester of academic year 2018 to 2019. He stressed that the law is forward-looking and cannot be applied retroactively. Meanwhile, the enactment of the free tuition fee law in SUCs was a welcome development, especially for students and their parents. The Commission on Higher Education also said millions of students will benefit from that. Kenneth Paciente tells us more.
When paying tuition fees, Gerald's only resort is to avail of student loans. But after President Rodrigo Duterte signed the free tuition fee bill for state universities and colleges, or SUCs, he couldn't help but feel great relief.
Since free na yung tuition, mas maluwag na, mas marami akong pwedeng paggamitan ng fees ko dun sa mga projects and other fees na babayaran.
The newly signed law is also a big help to Mary Ruth because she can now help her parents in saving money.
Siyempre natutuwa, malaking tulong din yun siyempre pati sa pamilya namin. Tsaka yung Tsaka dito sa UP yung enrollment, yung enlistment, syempre nahihirapan kami sa pagkuha ng subjects. Kaya kailangan din talaga yun na free tuition.
Some teachers in the University of the Philippines Diliman were delighted, especially those who repeatedly hear the supplications of students having a hard time in paying their tuition fees.
I think yung pinirmahan ngayon ni President Duterte definitely will help especially the poor students of UP.
This is also good news for parents.
Tama lang po yung kasi po yung iba hindi makabayad dahil kumisan walang pambayad. Nagpapasalamat ako sa ating presidente at ganun ang kanyang ginawa. Tulong sa mahirap.
According to the Commission on Higher Education or CHED, millions of students will benefit from this welcome assistance from the government.
The Commission on Higher Education joins the Filipino nation in congratulating and thanking President Rodrigo Duterte for signing the free tuition bill and ensuring that the dream of every Filipino family to send their children to school will be realized.
After the bill was signed by the President, CHED will focus on collaborating with the Department of Budget and Management and Congress to implement the law in the soonest possible time.
We look forward to working with the Department of Budget and Management and Congress in crafting the implementing rules and regulations that will balance the concerns of the economic manager on the fiscal impact of the bill and also ensure that the legacy of President Duterte on free education will be continued.
The free tuition fee in SUCs is expected to roll out in June 2018. Kenneth Pasyente for The Nation.
For the second time in just over 2 weeks, President Rodrigo Duterte was in war-torn Marawi City anew. The president visited Camp Kilala to show his support to soldiers of the Joint Special Operation Task Force Trident. The president told the soldiers that he loves his troops and hopes that they will be able to clean up and rid Marawi City of the terrorists. He said he is hopeful that the government will not lose more troops due to the ongoing conflict. The chief executive reiterated his pledge to put up a trust fund for the children of soldiers and policemen. During his visit, the president inspected the improvised medical station for the soldiers on the ground. It was the second unannounced visit of the president to Marawi, the first being last July 20. 2 previous attempts did not push through due to inclement weather. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Nestor Espinilla Jr. said domestic inflation remains benign despite the slight uptick last July to 2.8% from the previous month's 2.7%. According to Espinilla, government is on track to comfortably meeting its 2017 to 2018 inflation target, referring to the central bank's 2 to 4% target for this year until 2020. The inflation level last July brought the year-to-date average to 3.1%. The year-ago level is lower at 1.9%. Its increase last month was due to faster inflation of utility rates and of the transportation sub-index. The Department of Trade and Industry stands ready to provide skills and livelihood trainings for internally displaced persons or IDPs affected by the armed conflict in Marawi City. DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said business groups would have job openings for IDPs from war-torn Marawi City. He said DTI would provide skills training for IDPs in order to meet the skills requirement of the available positions in the private sectors. On the other hand, the agency will give good livelihood trainings for those who are engaged in entrepreneurial activities, as well as livelihood starter kits and micro-funding. From the ruins and rubble of war will rise a renewed and renovated redoubt for Maranaos that government and the resilient Maranaos themselves will build together and quicker than most expect, so it may stand as a shining testament to their commitment to peace and their renouncement of terrorist and extremist means. A promise President Rodrigo Duterte seeks to keep with the formation of an interagency commission and the inception of an ad hoc plan, all drawn up for immediate application once the siege comes to a complete close and with the end clearly in sight.
Task Force Bangon Marawi will begin its rehabilitation in areas affected by the conflict. TF Marawi spokesperson and Office of Civil Defense Assistant Secretary Christopher Purisima says the 11-hectare land where the temporary resettlement shelters will be built has been approved. The task force will construct 1,100 temporary shelters starting the first week of September. Cabinet Secretary Leoncio June Evasco added that they will try to provide for complete facilities like potable water and electricity to the Maranaos.
We have no reason not to provide electricity to the people of Marawi because the source of electricity for Mindanao comes from Marawi, the Agus River.
They will also build schools, a mosque, and health centers in selected barangays. Evasco added rehabilitation efforts should start by consulting local government units, but most especially the residents, who should be brought back to their homes.
We cannot let these people stay long in the evacuation centers because the longer they will stay in this evacuation center, the hurt will be going deeper and deeper in them, especially for the children who cannot understand why these things are happening in their own place.
TF Marawi is composed of 23 government agencies divided into 5 subcommittees as mandated by Administrative Order No. 3 signed by President Rodrigo Duterte for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of Marawi City and nearby towns affected by the conflict caused by the Mauti Group. A Bangon Marawi forum was held at the ASEAN Ministers meeting as this is considered a regional peace and violent extremism issue. Initial funds for the rehabilitation efforts amount to 20 billion pesos. Meanwhile, the SWD Secretary Judy Tagiwalo thanked the ASEAN and everyone who extended help.
Kailangan pa rin ang pagtutulungan natin dahil mag-umpisa na naman ang bagong yugto ng ating pagtutulungan para bumangon ang Marawi.
Department of Interior and Local Government Undersecretary Cesariano appealed to everyone who wished to send help to contact the Task Force Marawi National Emergency Operations Center at the numbers flashed on your screens. Marita Muaje for The Nation.
Stronger together. The holistic philosophy and group mantra the members of the ASEAN Economic and Cultural Alliance tout and celebrate as it welcomes coming together in peace and cooperation with all other nations on the planet. PTV's Julius Desamburon is at the scene of the action where ASEAN member nations welcome 3 reps from up north who come to participate in the events lined up for the auspicious occasion of Southeast Asia's emerging non-military federation turning 50.
Foreign Affairs Undersecretary for Policy Enrique Manalo led the meeting for the delegates of ASEAN Plus 3 senior officials meeting at Philippine International Convention Center in Pasay City. This focused on the cooperation of ASEAN countries with Japan, China, and South Korea.
The new work plan will be endorsed to the ASEAN Plus 3 foreign ministers meeting for adoption of the ministers. Once adopted, our ministers will endorse this work plan to the 20th ASEAN Plus 3 summit this November for notation by our leaders. Let me also acknowledge Japan's contribution of $900,000 to the APT Cooperation Fund. We intend to come up with other statements on the APT priorities, such as the APT Leaders' Statement on Food Security Cooperation, which at the moment is being discussed at the level of the Committee of Permanent Representatives in Jakarta.
The Japanese representative said they are still a partner of each country in line with the ASEAN 50 theme, partnering for change, engaging the world.
And Japan will make every effort to cooperate with other member countries to have a successful summit meeting. I would like to thank the Philippine government for great hospitality and kindness to all of us here in Manila today.
Korean representatives hopes the meeting next week will have a good result and lead into better and stronger ties.
It is my sincere hope that next week's ASEAN Plus 3 Foreign Ministers meeting will offer a valuable opportunity to reaffirm our cooperative spirit and pool our wisdom for a forward-looking development of ASEAN Plus 3 cooperation.
These countries also recognize the good manners and traits of the Filipinos, such as hospitality and kindness.
And I look forward to working with all of you to prepare for the upcoming APT Foreign Minister meetings and the summit in November, of course.
It was earlier announced by DFA spokesman Rob Bolivar that one topic included in the ASEAN Regional Forum was the ASEAN member states' cooperation and solution to violent extremism and terrorism. Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano will lead the 50th ASEAN Foreign Ministers Meeting, 18th APT Foreign Ministers Meeting, and the 24th ARF Plenary and Retreat. Cayetano also led the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights in line with the ASEAN Human Protection and Rights Declaration. These meetings may give way to better programs for a good life and progress in all aspects of each ASEAN member states and its citizens. Julius Disamboron for The Nation.
Peace and stability induces economic development, and the Pacific Rim has been the scene of sustained and unprecedented growth over the last couple of decades. Hence, ASEAN is close to crafting an agreement to jointly declare all 10 territories of its member nations as a nuclear weapon-free zone to preserve such coveted status quo. PTV's correspondent Eunice Samonte tells us more on the ongoing discussions on the issue in this report.
Other than the diplomatic affairs discussions, the leaders and representatives of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, also gave emphasis to the one and most talked about topics in the region, involving nuclear weapons and testing. Earlier this afternoon, ASEAN leaders, headed by Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano, conducted a meeting to review the progress of the implementation of the Plan of Action to strengthen the implementation of the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty 2013 to 2017 and consider proposals on what to do with the Plan of Action, which will expire at the end of 2017. They also discussed the way forward on the accession of the nuclear weapon states to the protocol of the CNWFC Treaty. This treaty zones includes the territory and the exclusive economic zones, or the EEZ, of the 10 member states. Under this treaty, the 10 member states also has an obligation not to join and not to develop, manufacture, or have control over the nuclear weapons. The ASEAN member states are also advised here not to take any action or to assist or encourage the manufacture or acquisition of any other nuclear explosive device by any state, and not to provide source or special fissionable materials or equipment to any non-nuclear weapon state. It can be recalled that in 1971, the idea of the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty was conceived by the original 5 members of the ASEAN after signing the draft for the Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality, or ZOPFAN, which serves as the backbone of this Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty. Meanwhile, Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano led the discussions with the delegates.
And I am personally very happy to finally meet all of you in my capacity as Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines. We as a group have an opportunity to learn from the exchange. We have an opportunity to learn from the exchange of ideas of how we can further enhance our cooperation in implementing the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty. This is especially important as we remember that peace and stability in the region leads to progress and development for all.
It can be recalled that on 26 and 29 of April this year, when the Philippines hosted a 30th ASEAN Summit, the chairman's statement reiterated the ASEAN member states' commitment to preserving Southeast Asia as a region free of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. Eunice Samonte for The Nation.
More delegates from member countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and their dialogue and trade partners arrived in Manila today for the ASEAN ministerial and other related meetings. Let's hear the full story from Alan Francisco.
All the representatives of ASEAN member countries are now in Manila for the 50th Foreign Ministers Meeting and related meetings. ASEAN is composed of 10 member countries, including the Philippines. The first ministers and delegates to arrive were from Malaysia, Cambodia, Laos, Brunei Darussalam, Indonesia, Singapore, and Myanmar. And just this evening, the Thai and Vietnamese delegates also arrived. Meanwhile, aside from ASEAN member countries, delegates from dialogue and trade partners of ASEAN are also attending the meetings. These include Sri Lanka, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and Turkey, among others. Representatives from United States, Japan, China, Republic of Korea, New Zealand, and some others are expected to arrive starting tomorrow until Monday. ASEAN member countries and their partners will be tackling important and timely issues facing the region. The ASEAN Committee said they will finalize some outcome documents for ASEAN's meetings with dialogue partners. Alan Francisco for The Nation.
Architectural and engineering students from a dozen schools nationwide gathered to use their creative energies and imagination to recreate in smaller perspective landmarks inside Manila's walled city using environment-friendly materials and colorful plastic toys and building pieces from a widely popular Scandinavian toy maker. The details of this friendly competition sponsored by the Tourism Department, and this report from Pauline Requesto.
Architecture, industrial design, and engineering students from 12 schools across the country will give life anew to one of Fort Santiago's historical buildings, the Baluarte de Santa Barbara. This is through the I Make History Fortress Architecture Scale Model Competition organized by the Department of Tourism and Private Sector. Student participants will recreate in scale model intramuros landmarks such as Palacio del Gobernador and Manila Cathedral using Lego bricks and eco-friendly materials.
The Department of Tourism hopes that more Filipinos, especially the young generation, would allude to giving importance to our cultural asset as significant tourism resources of this country.
Third-year architecture student Fibo is one of the participants in the competition, which he believes is a good venue for the youth to exhibit their creativity.
Sa Lego yung gamit namin, so hindi kami masyadong malilimit sa kung anong pwede namin gawin. Yun yung magiging challenge sa amin for us to know better and to know deeply kung bakit siya natayo, bakit ni-renovate ng pang 8th time.
Organizers of the competition say the contest is the very first of its kind in the world. Once finished, the students' outputs will be exhibited at the proposed I Make History Fortress Learning Center, a project for the adaptive reuse and restoration of the historical chamber. The Intramuros administration believes that the newest attraction will invite more tourists to visit the famous walled city.
We've added another destination point. So roughly right now, the number of visitors that is coming to Intramuros is we're targeting by next year more than 1 million.
Part of DOT's National Tourism Development Plan is to create a tourism industry that will not only pave way to inclusive growth, but also give Filipinos a better appreciation to our culture and heritage. Pauline Requesto for The Nation.
In news overseas, as U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson embarks on his first official trip to Southeast Asia this week, the United States continues to call for a legally binding mechanism to prevent conflicting territorial claims in the South China Sea from erupting into violent confrontations. Tillerson will also seek greater cooperation from regional allies in isolating North Korea. This report.
After a stern warning from China, Vietnam called off the permission to an energy company to drill for gas in the South China Sea. It is the latest chapter in the ongoing dispute over the world's most contested waterway that is believed to be rich in resources. Foreign ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are expected to endorse the framework of a code of conduct on the South China Sea as they gather in Manila. While the framework commits to cooperation over confrontation, it is also seen as bending to China's influence since it is not legally binding. The U.S. will continue to press for a dispute resolution mechanism and uphold freedom of navigation.
Destabilizing actions such as Chinese land reclamation, construction, and militarization of disputed features makes it harder for the region to resolve these disagreements peacefully.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson wants to work with China on differences without leading to open conflict. Among them is stepping up pressure against North Korea.
There is no future where North Korea holds nuclear weapons or the ability to deliver those nuclear weapons to anyone in the region, much less to the homeland. In doing so, we've sought to partner with China. China does account for 90% of economic activity with North Korea.
Tillerson will be walking a fine line with the Southeast Asian bloc. seeking assurances from them to isolate Pyongyang without creating a perception that North Korea overshadows their concerns in the South China Sea.
And the fact is that North Korea matters a lot less for Malaysia or Vietnam or the Philippines than South China Sea does, which is right at their front door.
Others warn regional allies are starting to believe they may not get practical support from Washington in the South China Sea disputes. Bill Hayton from Chatham House spoke via Skype.
They felt that the Trump administration couldn't be relied upon to protect Vietnam's interests in such a confrontation. So I suppose this is a sign that governments in Southeast Asia are concerned that the Trump administration isn't interested in defending their interests.
Besides maritime security and denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, regional counterterrorism is said to be also high on the ASEAN agenda.
According to the Pacific Institute, more than 2 million tons of all kinds of waste are poured into the world's waters every day. Scientists have gotten good at detecting it, but not so good at finding where it's coming from. Swiss researchers are working on a solution to that problem. A swimming robot that can patrol waterways 24/7 and locate pollution at its source. VOA's Kevin Enox reports.
This is the EnviroBot. Swiss researchers are taking it on a test drive in an alpine lake. It looks like a water snake, but it's actually a collection of little segments, all doing different jobs.
So the robot has many different modules, plus the head. So each modules are identical, and they have a motor so that the joint can oscillate. Then there is the head, which coordinates all the movements of these different modules. So you can have a pattern which propels the whole robot forward.
Its job, when fully developed, will be to patrol waterways on its own, looking for pollution.
So instead of having a measurement station somewhere, or instead of going out and taking a sample and bringing it back to the lab, the robot will actually go out and measure a number of water quality parameters in real time.
Each snaky segment or module is unique, so the EnviroBot can conduct all kinds of different water tests at the same time.
Like we have a module here that measures very general water quality parameters, temperature, conductivity, for example. We also have one for pH and for oxygen levels. Those are very general parameters that say water quality is good or not.
Other modules carry bacteria, fish cells, even tiny water fleas that react to toxins in the water. The researchers' ultimate goal is to create a full-time autonomous pollution-sniffing robot.
What we also like to achieve is that the robot by itself can find the source of a pollution, and in that way it would have to be able to measure locally and then decide where to go next, and that is obviously a very challenging project.